once again to Herbally Yours right here on 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Ellen Kamhi, the Natural Nurse at naturalnurse.com. And today we have with us our guest, very long-term Ayurvedic practitioner, author, and teacher, Karta Purkh Singh Khalsa. And he has been talking to us today. Of course, he has knowledge in so many topics, but we're just focusing on the topic of cognitive deficits and also in terms of aging. But let's backtrack a little bit. And what about cognitive deficits at the other end of life? Things like ADHD and learning difficulties in children and young adults.
We've made tremendous progress treating those. My specialty is neurology, actually, so I swim in these waters deeply every day and am involved with many people that have these kinds of concerns. You know, we began rejuvenating natural medicine in the United States about 50 years ago. I've been doing this for 47 years, and I was definitely in the first wave, as you were, Ellen, in terms of figuring out how we could reconstruct the natural healing system that was so healthy in our country about 120, 130 years ago. We were the envy of the world in natural medicine. And in that process, over the last 50 years, it's taken a lot of energy, time, and resources to bring it back. And we only had so much opportunity to work on these kinds of things. But as we did, we began to get better and better at treating these things. So the last 10 years has just been amazing, especially in the area of neurology. We really figured out how to deal with some of these things, and I feel like we can very effectively take care of exactly those kinds of things that you mentioned, ADHD, other behavioral kinds of issues, but even much more serious kinds of issues like multiple sclerosis, things that affect people in the first third of their life, the middle third of their life, and the last third of their life.
And what about autism?
Say it again, what about?
Autism.
Yeah, I'm very involved in the autism community, and I'm not sure if we could ever really say at this point that autism is curable or goes away, or even if we want to use those words, because people who are neurologically different are starting to sort of find each other and say, wait a minute, we're different, but we're not, it's just a different way to be. It's not a bad way to be. Now, clearly there's a spectrum. That's why they call it autistic spectrum disorder. And there are people that are clearly quite disabled by those things, but people who are at a higher level of functioning are often able to communicate and have very successful lives. They're just a little different. So when I deal with children in this area, we find that many of the things that we talk about for other neurological kinds of things click really well. Ayurveda doesn't have a specific term for autism. We know that the condition existed or something like that. And again, autism is not a thing. It's a concept of a whole bunch of different kinds of reactions.
That's true, but I do wonder, KP, if Ayurveda, of course, was developed in more ancient times, and I wonder there might have been some people with some kind of symptoms that were similar, but I don't think it was 1 out of 50 children or something that we're having nowadays.
Well, that's almost certainly true, and we know that the rate of diagnosis has gone up drastically just over the last generation. And in some places among boys, it's down to 1 in 33. And part of that is probably from better diagnostic techniques and different changes in the criteria. But still, obviously, it's increasing. So we have to ask ourselves, well, is it just because of genetics, or is it because of the environment? And probably some of all of those things, but most people have concluded that there's something about the environment that's involved. We don't know exactly what, but we're investigating all of that. In any case, you do all the things that you need to do to help people become healthier, and these kids do better. And I've just seen so many improve dramatically over the past 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, let's focus on some of those. Like, what are some of the first go-tos that you as a professional would use to help people with any kind of neurological challenge?
Right. Well, the first one that I could mention is the herb Gotu-kola, and that's probably the premier neurological herb in the world that increases cognition and helps to heal the actual tissue of the brain and nerves. So we use that for all kinds of trauma to the nerves, crushing injuries, viral infections of the nerves, neurodegenerative diseases like multiple sclerosis, and just memory and things like that. And that's an herb that has a lot of really good science. It's an herb, a jungle creeper that grows in swampy areas. The elephants eat it in the jungle. Very much a food. It's much like spinach, and you can cook it up and eat it, or you can make tea out of it. The main key with that particular herb is to use enough. So people often use amounts that are so small they don't notice the difference. It's a flimsy salad vegetable like spinach, so the doses are substantial. And then the difference, well, here's an example. I was treating a boy in Germany who's 9 years old and has autism, and we'd reached a sort of a plateau, and we added this herb, Gotu Kola, and this boy had never made eye contact with anybody before. And his father was telling me by phone that after about 3 days of Gotu Kola, the boy looked him right in the eye and said a full sentence. It's just mind-blowing.
That's thrilling for the parent.
Yeah, and he's been making excellent eye contact and having direct conversations with his brother and his teachers and everything ever since. Really dramatic. Quite impressive.
And this is with Gotu Kola. I just want to spell that for people, and that in case they're not familiar with the word, it's G-O, right, T-U-K-O-L-A. It's something that's rather easy to find.
Oh, absolutely. It would be in every health food store.
That's an amazing change that you just shared. What kind of dose did you have the child on for that?
Well, the typical adult dose for that kind of situation is about 30 grams. So 30 grams by weight of chopped dried herb, and you cook that into tea and drink the tea. Now, that dose is going to vary for children depending on their weight. So if the child weighs half of the official adult dose, then they get half a dose.
Wow. So that's one, and it's very mild, and you're talking about using it for children, so of course it's fine both for children and adults.
Yep.
That's a wonderful piece of information. And listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my guest today is KP Khalsa. Best place to find him is at www.internationalintegrative.com. And tell us about your classes that are just so wonderful, because I think you have classes for anyone interested in really so many topics in natural medicine, and anything from a professional to someone just starting out.
Yeah, my school, which has been going for about 30 years, has a wide variety of teachers on the faculty, and we specialize in just about every aspect of natural medicine that you could imagine, and we teach classes all over the country in actual classrooms, but most of the work we do is on the internet, and we offer classes for the beginner, the educated layperson, and the professional at every level, and they're everything from 90 minutes on a particular topic like cold and flu or digestion, all the way to 6 or 8 week series about more sophisticated kinds of things, to professional training programs that might take 2 or 3 years of classes, all online, available to anybody. Amazing new technology.
It really is, because you can be at home, and then you can hand in assignments. I guess you have people do research and take the classes, and you have beautiful PowerPoints, very easy to follow. I have actually participated myself, and they're really, really great.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for providing that for the public. Now, you mentioned turmeric and curcumin, and I don't want to end the show without you telling us, is that the same thing? Are they different? Why are people hearing that word so often?
Yeah, excellent question. Turmeric is the yellow spice that makes curry powder yellow in India, and curcumin is one constituent in that herb. So the herb has numerous other things. It's one of just the profound herbs from Ayurveda, and I tuned into it right away when I heard about it from my teacher. I've been a turmeric missionary for 45 years. The scientists then looked at that and said, well, the rate of Alzheimer's disease in India is 1/8 of that in the United States. The United States is in the top 5, and India is number 113. So what do they do differently there? And I would say, well, everything, but they said, well, they use that spice. Could it be that? And then we know there's curcumin in there. Could it be that? And it was just that much of a lucky guess. Gave it to some mice, showed some benefit, and we were off and running. And now there have been tens of thousands of studies on curcumin. After vitamin D, it's the most studied substance in human history. So curcumin is a sort of a drug-like substance, you could say, or a natural constituent extracted from turmeric, which allows you to use it much more conveniently. And we now know that doses of at least 12 grams are safe, and we often clinically use doses even somewhat higher than that, way more than you could get by putting some turmeric in your beans.
So we name now Gotu Kola and turmeric. Now I want to say you and I did a show on one of my other stations recently, and you mentioned huperzine. That's Huperzina. So that was one I had never experimented with personally, so I actually purchased it because of you mentioning it. And I have found it to be, really amazingly effective. I don't really have an issue, but just sort of an increased sharpness in terms of cognitive ability.
I had exactly the same experience, and like you, I'm 63 years old. I'm not experiencing memory diminution yet, so I just took it to see what would happen. One of my colleagues, a conventional neurologist, said he gives it to every patient because it just does everything you want for every type of neurological issue. But it's the best thing I've ever seen for baby boomers losing their car keys, that's for sure. It's extracted from a Chinese moss. It promotes the function of a particular neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. That's a major factor in establishing memory and retrieving memories. And people take it, and people who are severely disabled get a real bump from it. And then people like you and I who take it just find that things seem to be just a little snappier when you're looking for a word or something.
Yeah, I found it. I really was amazed, and that's why I did. And it's a nice little teeny sort of tablet, so it's not a whole lot to take. And I just do it in the morning. I wonder if it would interfere with sleep at all. Although I don't feel like it's stimulating.
No, it's not stimulating, and no one has ever told me that it interfered with sleep. The typical dose is somewhere between about 100 and about 800 micrograms. It does cause nausea at higher doses, so if you get up above 500, you want to increase very slowly, and if you start to get just a little twinge of nausea, then back off, because it can be kind of surprising. So for pathologies, we use doses of up to around 800, but to just sharpen up the memory in aging baby boomers, 100, 200 is fine.
Well, I want to thank you for all that great information, and I want to just let you give our listeners a great place to get in touch with you.
Yep, that would be internationalintegrative.com. As you suggested, my personal website is kpkhalsa.com. You can check there for what I'm up to personally. Love to hear from you anytime, anyway. We're not too busy to talk to you. We'd love to hear from you, so give us a jingle.
And thank you. And thank you for listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse. And until next time, we're hoping that you stay healthy. Thank you for tuning in. We're produced at the studios of 90.3 Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. You can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com. Join us next time for another edition. Until then, stay healthy.